Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your devilishly dazzling hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today we have a show filled with drastic temperature changes and big emotions for you, as we travel from hell to the South Pole and back again. First I will take a look at the Netflix-produced hit series Devilman Crybaby, then John will talk about the Arctic adventures of the girls from A Place Further Than the Universe. Finally, we will discuss the newest iteration in the Garo franchise with Garo Vanishing Line. Hope you brought weatherproof clothing. We'll be right back. Go Nagai is one of the most iconic names in the world of manga and anime. Chances are, if you have been a fan of this kind of entertainment for a while, you have read or heard his name mentioned somewhere at some point. And if not, you maybe came across at least one of the bigger franchises he is known for, such as Cutie Honey, Mazinger, Gatorobo, and Devilman. Those are some big names. And as it is the 50th anniversary of the famous creator, it is a good year to be a Go Nagai anime fan. We got a new Mazinger movie with Mazinger Z Infinity, a new Cutie Honey series called Cutie Universe, which is airing as we speak. And the Go Nagai thing that made the biggest waves in the anime community this year, at least up till now, is the new 10-episode Netflix series, Devilman Crybaby. So, what's the show about? Well, it starts out with two childhood friends, Akira and Ryo, who are wildly different from each other. Akira is an emotional, crybaby. Very empathetic, very caring, gets upset and tears up easily. Ryo, on the other hand, is cold, calculating, hyper-intelligent, and rational to the point of being a bit machine-like, to say the least. So after they spend their childhood together, they get separated for a while and then meet again in their high school years. When Akira is in the middle of defending his friend / maybe love interest Miki from a weird group of rappers / hoodlums, Ryo pops up out of nowhere and kinda steals him away, because he needs Akira's help to prove a theory. Because when studying overseas under a professor, Ryo became aware of the existence of so-called devils or demons who possess human beings and transform them into vile human-eating monsters. Usually that means the host gets taken over completely and nothing is left of their former self, but when Ryo tries to prove the existence of these devils on a grand scale at a weird drugs and sex orgy at a dance club, Akira gets possessed by the powerful devil Amon, manages to retain his human heart, and thus becomes something else entirely, a devilman. Teaming up with Ryo, he now intends to root out the devils in hiding to protect humanity from them. However, Ryo's motives are not as pure as Akira wants to believe, and his former best friend will lead him on a path of death, destruction, and despair. So that is the basic story setup, and from there on out, the series kinda goes the Akira versus Demon of the Week route for a few episodes, and then turns into something entirely different. And to talk about that, I will have to go into spoiler territory. I'll try to be vague in regards to the details and how the show actually ends, but I need to be able to talk about some of the basic developments on the show, or we won't get anywhere. But before that, let's talk a bit about the staff. This show was directed by Masaka Yuasa, a name that doesn't necessarily come to mind first when you think of the original Devilman stuff, just in terms of style and design, because the original 70s manga and the 80s OVA, for example, have more of a hard-edged, high-octane shonen feel and design to them, kinda. Yuasa's work, on the other hand, has a very particular style that is kinda unlike a lot of your other standard anime design work. It's very flat, very high contrast colors, the animation is very loose and fluid. I don't want to call it cartoony because it often has a too abstract feel to call it that, but it's definitely different. You can look at trailers for Ping Pong, which is a series he did, or Mind Game, which is a movie he did, or Kaiba, to get an idea what I'm talking about. And I gotta say, I'm not really a fan of the design in his shows, in his work. Every time something made by him popped up on my radar, like Ping Pong, for example, because I like sports anime, so I was like, hey, what's this? I looked at it and it was like, this is not really what I'm looking for in anime design-wise. It looks interesting and different, but it's not really my thing. I'd say in terms of not being your typical anime stuff, in terms of designs, it's up there with Pop Team Epic for this season, in terms of, not being what you what you usually get in your typical anime season. So it shook things up a little. I guess that's a good thing, right? I mean, all for diversity and everything, even if that particular style is not necessarily to your liking. Now, I checked Crybaby out nonetheless, even though, like I said, I'm not too fond of Yuasa's style, because I heard good things from people I trust after the first couple of episodes, and it definitely looks like a Yuasa show. I can say that for certain. The characters have this kind of rough drawing, rough edge, noodly look to them. Color work and animation quality is exactly what I expected it to be. Fluid, loose, but, kind of flat. High contrast colors and kind of, flat drawings. And it took me a while to get into it, but after a while I started to really dig it. The faces, for example, are really expressive. The fluid animation lends itself very well to crazy action scenes. The demons are half super grotesque / horrifying and half wacky and funny in terms of how weird their designs can get. Some really out there stuff. Even going down to just being like blobs of color with teeth. But if you can stand certain scenes to be more of a clash of, weird colors than actual crystal clear designs, you will probably not be happy with how this show looks, just in general. I thought ultimately the designs work really well for such a visceral and emotionally loaded show. But, it comes down to how, what you expect from your anime and how well you can adapt to such a different style. But yeah, speaking of a visceral show, if you're more of a squeamish person when it comes to violence and gore, do not watch this. Like, not even the first episode. This is one, and that goes directly out to you, John. I mean, you have been toughened up with JoJo's and everything, but this is a different league. This is one of the most ridiculously violent, sexually explicit, bloody, dark, horrifying shows I've seen in a long time. This is like very reminiscent of like the most violent 80s OVAs I can think of. The orgy scene from the first episode alone has so much sex and gruesome deaths in it that I was kind of surprised this landed on Netflix the way it did. And, that they gave the actual money for that to happen. And in the beginning, you can still have some fun with that. For example, if you love to watch schlocky horror movies like Friday the 13th or schlocky action movies in that regard, who have a high gore factor. But later, the series changes its tone completely, and the violence becomes a lot more emotionally harrowing. I'm not thin-skinned when it comes to those things, and I can, take a lot of violence and gore and stuff, but certain scenes from the second half of that show are still stuck in my head and left me very distraught while watching the show. But yeah, we'll get to that. Ichiro Okuchi wrote the script for the series. That's a name to that might sound familiar to some people who have been listening to our show for a longer time. We've mentioned him before. He wrote screenplays for scripts for shows like Code Geass, Princess Principal, which we have reviewed, Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which we also reviewed, the Berserk movies, Planetes, and schlockfests like Valve Wraith and Guilty Crown.
Oh boy.
Yeah. He also did quality work. Yes, he had to occupy more of an adapting writer's role here, because even though certain characters and scenes were changed for this series, judging from what I've read about it, apparently the broad plot follows the old material surprisingly closely. Either him or Yuasa definitely wanted to give the story and especially the ending a different feel and put in a few twists here and there, character-wise, but a lot of the key scenes from the original 70s manga seem to be in here. And I think Yuasa came out and specifically stated that that was his goal, that he wanted to do a new adaptation of the old material. And yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty interesting, bringing the such an old manga, such an old story from the 70s, back into, the here and now, and adding some, some relevant new themes and new story moments to it, and, some, new character twists. I also want to quickly highlight the music in the show because it's great. It often has this fantastic retro synth vibe to it, which I really liked. It's composed by Kensuke Ushio, who also did the music for Ping Pong, A Silent Voice, and parts of Space Dandy. I really love the soundtrack for the show. I even like the rap parts, even though that usually is not my music at all. Like I mentioned before, we have these group of side characters that are often chiming in on the show's event with some beatboxing rap lyrics. And not only are those lyrics pretty good, they also serve as a good illustration and world-building tool to fill the viewer in on certain themes and developments in the show. It was a really nice touch that I haven't really seen in anime, like, at all. In certain movies I have, but I don't remember it seeing in an anime show. Just, using a kind of music to as a storytelling tool is pretty cool. Good stuff. So like I said, I will delve into basic spoiler territory now because I kind of need to. So you have been warned. If you don't want to know anything about the show, if you've at this point thought, oh yeah, it sounds interesting enough, I want to check this out, maybe I'm into this kind of stuff, then have it go for it. The less you know about the show, the better for you, just from terms of viewing experience, because more moments will hit harder, I guess, for better or worse. But yeah, now spoiler time. 3, 2, 1, go. So after the series has run its course for a few episodes, there's a big turn of events. We learned that there are more Devilman, Akira questions his worldview, and one of the characters, of the main characters, incites an event that changes the show from a Monster of the Week series to a story that is about the literal apocalypse and the end of humanity. And as the name of the show suggests, we are talking the biblical version here. Like, very literal in certain parts, especially imagery-wise. This is also where things get super serious and disturbing. If you got attached to certain characters in the show, the series will fuck you up without mercy. Like I said, I'm not squeamish when it comes to those things, but goddamn, at least 2 death scenes in the show were so gut-wrenching and impactful that I still have to think about them, like, up to today. It's heavy stuff. Not only, because they are so gruesome and so violent, but also tonally and, just what it means in terms of the story and how they're staged and what it means in the, broader sense what the show is talking about in terms of humanity and the human nature and everything. And it's just all really, it feels really bad. And I not mean badly executed, but you feel bad when you watch this because some of that resonates really and rings really true. What the show is saying and what the show is doing. It's basically all about, hey, demons suck, but humans are just as bad. And we will show you that in excruciating detail, over the top. And even though it's really heightened and ridiculous stuff, it's high emotion show. It's really loud. It's really expressive. It felt way too real often enough to maybe give some viewers, I don't know, nightmares, but at least a very bad feeling in their stomach. And it hits double hard because the show has a lot of cool characters. We have Akira, who, after being possessed by Anon, not Anon, oh god, that would have been worse. After being possessed by Amon, goes through a complete body transformation, even when not in full Devilman mode. All Devilmen do, actually. He becomes much more masculine, is louder, more forward. Thankfully, he never becomes an asshole, which, if someone has a complete character turn, is this kind of closed off, introverted guy, and then, for some reason becomes this super extroverted dude. Often in anime, they do that, where, the character becomes kind of an annoying asshole. But not here. Akira is still a swell guy, which is kind of where the puberty metaphor the show is going for with that falls a bit flat. Because, to be honest, all of us turn into selfish little assholes when we go through puberty.
That's real.
Yeah. not Akira, though. He's a really sympathetic guy. Not an idiot, but way too trusting. That's one of his major flaws. We also have Miki, who, just like Akira, is in the school's track team. She is kind of kind of a saint because she is super understanding and nice and sympathetic and all-around good person. Again, just like Akira, a bit too naive, especially when it comes to her fellow human beings. We have Miko, who's also on the track team and an admirer of Miki, and who plays an important role in the later part of the show. All cool characters, and a lot more in that cast that you can get attached to. And, once certain ones leave the show, that is, all the more harrowing. And yeah, as you might have noticed, running is actually a big theme in this show. It's like this thread woven through the narrative and imagery and emotional key points of the show. The important characters being on the track team together, and one of the key turning points of the show is centered around a relay race. There's an emotionally harrowing moment connected to that theme, with characters literally running for their lives. And also the Devilman characters have this super weird animalistic running style that, gave me a laugh the first time I saw it. But it makes sense, just in how they wanted to portray how different the Devilman are from, normal human society, and what that stands for. You can dig deep into that stuff. Not too deep, naturally, but there are a lot of interesting, themes and metaphors in this show that you can sink your teeth into. And yeah, many cool characters, like I said, and it was hard to see all those characters' lives turn to a giant pile of shit. And even though at the ending they leave you maybe like the smallest glimmer of a hopeful note, considering the development of one of the characters, but I would also understand if you don't see it that way, because often this series feels like tragedy porn. Like there are a lot of bad things happening, and there are a lot of bad feelings thrown around. And if you can't deal with that, if you get upset easily by those kind of things, when shit gets too real, literally, that even in such a fantastical setting, then you might not like the show, and you might not get through it. It's all just so fucking sad. That's what it comes down to. It's really, really sad stuff. I mean, I like the ending in itself because it had some weirdly strong parallels to a Stephen King story I really, really adore. But even that one felt a lot more hopeful, which is saying a lot for people who know that story. And I don't know if I ever want to watch this series again. But that's how I'm feeling right now. I might turn around on it any day, because in fact I have changed my mind several times after finishing the show. So who knows what my final opinion on it will be, if I'll ever have one. Currently, I'm really ambivalent about it, because I'm like, there was enough in that show that I liked for something, for something I expect to be just a schlocky, hyper-violent action show. The series is very rich in themes and metaphors for rather substantial stuff. I like many of the characters, which made it, of course, even harder to see those not make it, or at least some of them. I like the music. I ended up liking certain parts of the design and animation more than I expected. There's a lot of good stuff in that show. It's a heartfelt plea for empathy, for love, and against all manners of xenophobia. And that plea really hits home in a lot of its key moments. And I really liked that. I thought that was gripping, that was, like I said, substantial, and really had some important things to say. But on the other hand, it's often the opposite of a pleasant watch. I mean, it's intended, but certain parts of it also feel rather rushed, and some scenes are too goofy or not built up well enough to work in the serious emotional context the show is going for in its latter half. But yeah, if you're not faint of heart and you're interested in a series that will probably give you a lot of food for thought, good and bad, and something that looks completely different from most of the stuff out there in anime TV land, you might want to check this out. Just be warned, you will not be in a happy place after watching this show.
So, time for a little emotional whiplash? I mean, I guess you could refer to it like that. because we're going to talk about, or I'm going to try and direct a conversation as best I can about A Place Further Than the Universe. So, Place Further Than the Universe. Filled with an overwhelming sense of wonder for the world around her, Mari Tamaki has always dreamt of what lies beyond the reaches of the universe. However, despite harboring such large aspirations on the inside, her fear of the unknown and anxiety over her own possible limitations have always held her back from chasing them. But now, in her second year of high school, Mari is more determined than ever to not let any more of her youth go to waste. Still, her fear continues to prevent her from taking that first ambitious step forward. That is, until she has a chance encounter with a girl who has grand dreams of her own. Spurred on by her mother's disappearance, Shirase Kobuchizawa. I'm sorry, longer Japanese names I always fuck up on.
It's all right.
Shirase has been working hard to fund her trip to Antarctica. Despite facing doubt and ridicule from virtually everyone around her, Shirase is determined to embark on this expedition to search for her mother in a place further than the universe itself.
Mm-hmm.
Inspired by Shirase's resolve, Mari jumps at the chance to join her. Soon their efforts attract the attention of the bubbly Hinata Miyake, who is eager to stand out, and Yuzuki Shiraishi, a polite girl from a high-class background. And together, they all set sail toward the frozen south. Mm-hmm. This show... I love this show so much. I'm just going to preface what I have to say with that. It was, I think, your show, Devilman, probably elicited an extreme emotional reaction for one reason, and this does it for like the complete opposite. I don't know if you'd say this like the same type of reaction, but you know, you're going from one end of the spectrum, from one extreme end of the spectrum to the other. I will say that going into this show, if you want to prepare yourself, you need 2 boxes of tissues. I say 2 boxes because there's a certain episode toward the end where you're probably going to use up an entire box on that one episode.
Well, we promised high emotions, so
yes.
This is the tone.
This show, I didn't really know what to expect going into it, because it was, you know, it's an original show. It's not based off of any other pre-existing property. Yeah, it comes across in concept as a simple sort of show. You know, this girl wants to go down to Antarctica to find her presumably lost mother, and everyone else just kind of wants to go for the ride because everyone wants to provide a moral and emotional support for one another. And that's something that this show, you know, that sort of mutually supporting everyone, each other, is something that this show manifests incredibly well, because the writing is very, very strong. The show was written by Juki Hanada, who we have mentioned before I have mentioned before at least, during Sound Euphonium and Love Live. So he's found a way to constantly tug at my heartstrings. He's very good at that.
He got you pegged.
Yeah. I think we may have mentioned him briefly as well. I don't remember if we've talked on the podcast, or more correctly, you have talked about on the podcast at length about 7 Deadly Sins.
No, not yet. I mean, that's gonna happen because the second season is airing right now, and I don't know how many episodes that will have. So I'm gonna review that next season or the one after that. But yeah, it's gonna happen. So.
Right. Since we're talking a little bit about staff, why not? The show was directed by Atsuko Ishizuka, who has done work on other shows like Hana Yamata, Pet Girl of Sakura Dorm, No Game, No Life, the series and the movie.
At least the last one rang a bell.
Yeah. Prince of Stride Alternative, which I think we walked away from sort of cold, but yeah. You know, it can't all be winners.
At least only lukewarm. Like, I don't know, we expected something a bit more substantial than, you know, simple fan service.
But you know,
that's what it was.
I'm sure whoever wanted to watch that show beginning to end got what they wanted out of it, so that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
The animation is done by Madhouse.
Yay!
So this show, it's very, very pretty. I think that I don't
Totally
think
agree with that.
I don't think outside of Prince of Stride, I could really think that show in the looks department wasn't bad, but it was not up to the pedigree.
Weird stylistic choices there. Like
Yeah.
it's too shiny, and the not necessarily well directed. Like the running scenes that should have been exciting weren't interesting. Not like super excitingly animated. Like if you look at something like Free, that is also kind of in that department, and which we will talk about more in the future probably because there's a new season of that coming too. But that is like the sports scenes, which I'm watching that for. Are super well directed and super well animated and exciting, and big emphasis on the accurate emotions and great camera movement and everything. It just looks really good and exciting. And Prince of Stride just in
Kyoto Animation, when they fire on all cylinders, they're incredible.
Oh yeah,
Because I didn't watch Free, but I've seen snippets of it, and it sort of makes you think to myself, maybe I should go back and watch this because it does look great.
It's a fantastic looking show. The question is how much man meat you can stand in your show.
I mean, I like to think I can have a tolerance for that. Like that's whatever.
Yeah.
If you've got an interesting story to tell, obviously the subtext in Free is
yeah, not subtext,
but I mean, that's fine if that's the story you want to tell. Whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say Free is the male version of K-On!, as in it's not pretty girls but pretty boys that do fun stuff together and become friends and everything, and that's basically it. It gets a bit more interesting in its second season, but
it strikes me as having more substance than K-On! Though, because I tried watching K-On! And I was like,
in its second season it does. Like there's some things, especially when it comes to the friendship of the main characters, that are, that feel much more substantial. And yeah,
but then again, I also had that same feeling with Love Live Sunshine, where the first season was like rehash, and the second season was like the hardest hitting emotional series that season.
Yeah, I wonder if that can be a credit to the same writer, like you said. I just mean, in terms of how well you liked Place Further in the Universe, and the emotional high points in that show. And what I saw from it, what I've seen from it, I've only watched like 3 episodes, 4.
Man.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Fell off the wagon at some point. Not necessarily the show's fault in itself, but it was kind of what I expected from that, and that's not what I was interested in. Or it didn't get to a point quick enough that I was interested. Let's say that. It didn't get to the Arctic quick enough or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I will grant that if you're looking for an Antarctic adventure, you're not going to get it in the first 2 acts of the show.
Yeah.
Once you...
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It seems like, okay, this is first and foremost about these girls finding each other and becoming friends and overcoming their obstacles in life. And, and then once they have, taken the first steps, they're going to head to the Arctic, and then maybe we get some resolution to that. And I guess just took too long for me, but there is still the stuff I watched. There was a lot of good stuff in that. I don't know if you want to highlight a specific scene later, but if you do, I can imagine that like maybe the chase scene in the city area is one of the things, because that's really fun and really well staged. That was a really good scene.
Everything about that chase scene was incredible. I wasn't expecting that to happen. And then when I'm watching it, I was like, holy, this is amazing. Of course it's amazing. It's Madhouse. Throwing themselves full on at this source material. And it was super good. And I don't know if I could pick out... Well, I think my one favorite scene is spoilers from like the second to last episode, and I don't want to give that away because me explaining what the scene is about would not in any capacity do it justice.
Yeah.
It needs to be, you need to not know what's going to happen. You need to go in fresh, and you need to, you can't prepare yourself for it. Which I feel like is sort of, there was a show a few years back called Plastic Memories.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yes, and I believe I've said, oh, I know exactly how this is going to end. I'm going to be ready for it. I was not ready for it. This is sort of the same sort of deal, without saying too much, but it definitely bears watching and experiencing because, like I said, the journey of them going there, of finally convincing the other people on the expedition to let the girls go with them. Their trip down to Australia, where they're going to board the boat that will take them to Showa Station down in Antarctica. They almost lose the money that Shirase raised, and that leads to equal parts sadness and hilarity. And then, the actual their actual stay there and learning about what it's like for an Antarctic expedition, the everyday or the day-to-day of what they do, how they explore these frozen wastes, and just what it's like to spend I believe it was about half a year they spent down there. And it's really interesting on a number of levels because of that. This show is I don't know how to say it, really, really good for so many reasons because of that. Going into this thinking, they're going to go to Antarctica, and that's going to be, probably the bulk of the show. No, they tease it out really hard, and it makes it feel more satisfying. Especially there's a scene when the girls hop off the boat, and that is probably another one of the greatest moments when Shirase is able to throw into the face of the rest of the world, look at what we did. You didn't do it. and it
sounds very emotionally rewarding.
Yes, there's like equal moments of like these strong emotional highs, along with just these great moments of levity of the girls, getting to know each other and trying to, figure out how they're gonna do what they want to do. And a lot of the episodes were punctuated with these insert songs that were very very strong because, of course they're sung by the girls, of course, because how else would you, make such a strong emotional attachment to these scenes other than to have the characters in them singing these songs. And thematically, that's something that it's not, exclusive to this show, obviously. That's something that I love in pretty much any show. Because speaking of the music, it was done by Yoshiaki Fujisawa, who we're going to draw that parallel back to Love Live again, because he's worked on that, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff like Land of the Lustrous, one of your all-time favorites, Vatican Miracle Examiner.
Yay!
The very, I guess I would say...
I like Land of the Lustrous too a lot, though.
Yes. Which is a show that I would still like to check out, but... Hey, it's going to be going on high dives, so I don't have to rely on Amazon anymore.
Yay. Maybe want to wait for the second season.
Well, I think they're going to start adding episodes. It's either next week or the week after. So, but yeah, them getting off the boat and Shirase in so many words, just screaming at the top of her lungs, "In your face!" is probably my second favorite moment. My first favorite is massive spoilers, so I don't want to go into it. But the show it's well worth watching. I don't want to say too prematurely, but I kind of feel like this is very, very high on the list for show of the season for me. But we'll find out as we finish out this season, since we still have a few weeks left.
Yes.
But it is
two episodes, to be exact.
Yeah, we'll we'll get there. We'll get there. But this show is so well written and so well executed and such an incredible surprise that I feel like it's definitely worth experiencing.
So what I found most interesting about this show, what couldn't keep me with it, but what made me initially watch it was the underlying mystery of the mother of one of the girls having disappeared, and she going to Antarctica to see if she can find her or find what happened to her or whatever. So does that mystery get resolved? Is there?
Yes.
So there's a resolution to that. It's
There is a very strong resolution.
Okay. So, but you would say that the show, is less about the resolution than about the journey itself? Like the journey is more important?
Yes and no, because I feel like it very strongly demonstrates that both the journey and the destination can be equally resonant in different ways.
Yeah, sounds good. Maybe I'll go back to it and check it out. I've heard so many good things about the show.
I really hope you do.
Hey, we can make a deal. You watch Land of the Lustrous, and I watch that. So.
I was eventually planning on watching that. I was eventually planning on watching Girls Last Tour, because those are both shows that after hearing you talking about them and seeing everyone else talk about them, yeah, I'd like to check them out.
All right, maybe we'll get around to doing that. So, but before that, any final words on A Place Further in the Universe?
Comes with very, very strong recommendation. Just be prepared to cry a lot.
And now for something completely different. People with superpowers fighting demons that possess human beings. Wait, why does that sound familiar? All right. However, the last series we will talk about today, Garo Vanishing Line, might have some basic commonalities with Devilman and probably was inspired by it. What wasn't? Hideaki Anno, for example, has stated multiple times that Devilman was hugely influential on his ideas for Neon Genesis Evangelion. But in terms of tone, design, and execution, Vanishing Line is completely different from Devilman Crybaby. So we have at least some variety in this show. Not counting A Place Further in the Universe, that's, on the complete other spectrum of emotions here. And, interest and everything. And brings you at a much... lets you be at a much happier place than the first show we talked about. So,
even though A Place Further in the Universe will make you cry, you'll feel a lot better after.
Yeah. So Whiplash, like I said, from hell to the Arctic and back again to hell, kinda. But like I said, Garo, different tone. I guess the most interesting about Garo the franchise is that it did not start out as either a manga, an anime, or a light novel, which is, are the most current sources of anime stuff we're watching. The first Garo series was originally a tokusatsu show. For people who are not familiar with Japanese TV, beyond its animated output, tokusatsu originally referred to live action films or TV series with heavy use of special effects. Subgenres of these are that you maybe have heard of before are, for example, kaiju movies like Godzilla, the Super Sentai series that eventually made it to the West in the form of Power Rangers, or other superhero shows like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, also known over here as Mask Rider, and of course Garo. The superhero series in the tokusatsu genre of TV are usually about one or multiple heroes being able to transform into powerful suited or armored versions of themselves and fighting monsters, demons, or other superpowered humans. And yeah, I've watched quite a lot of tokusatsu stuff over the years. As a kid, I watched I think that was part of the metal hero genre. It's called Winspector. I really liked that show. It's super goofy, but I enjoyed it as a kid. I thought the transforming car was super cool. And then later on, I, of course, watched Power Rangers, at least like the first couple of seasons. And then later, I watched Mask Rider. Later, I checked, the original Kamen Rider, some series here and there, like Kamen Rider Fies, Kabuto, and Gaim, which was probably the best one I've seen, despite its stupid fruit armor gimmick. But that was written by Gen Urobuchi and had a really cool story. Also, Kamen Rider Double is really good. So yeah, lots of fun superhero stuff in that genre.
Yeah, your experience with that sort of stuff vastly outpaces mine, because I watched a bit of Power Rangers when I was a kid. Not super religiously like some of the people I knew. And then a few years back, I don't know if you watched it as well. There was a goofy sort of like parody called Akiba Ranger.
Yeah, I at least watched a few episodes of it. I enjoyed it, but I didn't stick to it for some reason. But yeah, that was a great spoof.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of shows out there. I think another one I've watched was Super Samurai Cyber Squad. That was also, I don't know if that was part of the Ultraman franchise. No, Gridman was the original name of it. Yeah, so yeah, lots of that stuff around. And Garo, of course, was one of them. I watched the first season of Garo back in 2007, maybe. It started in 2005, but I think I watched it sometime after it had already wrapped up. But yeah, I remember really liking it. I like superhero stuff in general. Big shocker, I know. But I found the Japanese takes on it to be always interesting because of they were often so widely different from what I was used to with American superhero stuff. Same counts for My Hero Academia. This is one of the reasons I adore that show, among many others. But even in the tokusatsu genre, Garo felt like something special back when I watched it, because it had a much more dark, mature tone to it than Kamen Rider or the Super Sentai stuff had. And the story is about an order of magic knights called Makai Knights, and snuffing out demons that possess humans and sending them back to hell, basically. The first series put a strong emphasis on its horror motif. Hell, the demons in the franchise are even called horrors. It was about temptation, greed, weakness of the human soul, because horrors are kind of like vampires. They can eat you, but they can't just take you over without you letting them in first. And they achieve that goal by tempting people to have who have suffered or are greedy or are flawed in some kind of other way, and promise them to grant them their deepest wish if they bond with them. Of course, this is all a trick, because once they take you over, nothing is left but the horror itself. But yeah, the show was pretty rad. It had some nudity, which was pretty unusual for the tokusatsu stuff I watched until then. It had some gruesome deaths, great, well-directed fight scenes, a good cast. It was cool stuff, and I remember liking the ending of the series a lot as well. Yes, when the heroes donned their magic golden wolf armor, the show switched to CG that was dated even back then, and that would probably give me eye herpes if I watched it today. But the rest of the show was strong enough to make up for its few shortcomings. And it was a success, so it got a lot of sequels and spin-offs, which I have watched only a few of, but at least one of those I really liked as well, because it featured one of the coolest side characters from the first series in a leading role. But yeah, and then we finally got an anime spin-off in 2014, almost 10 years after the original series aired, and it was also great. It had a really cool look to it, a cool medieval fantasy setting, great characters. I really liked the first Garo anime. And in 2015, we already got a new anime series, Garo Crimson Moon, set in feudal Japan this time. And I couldn't get into that one. I didn't like the character designs. I don't know if you've seen that. If you have seen anything from that show.
I think I've seen a little bit, but this
main character has weird hair.
Yeah.
In general, the animation felt a lot more low budget and janky, and the characters just didn't hook me, so I bailed after like 2 episodes or something. It was like, no, this is not even remotely as good as the first anime series was. Yeah, and then finally
the first one called? Divine Flame, I think?
No, I think Divine Flame is the movie.
Oh, okay.
Which I haven't checked out yet, but that might also be great. At least I suppose it will be well animated. I think it was just called Garo the Animation. So, yeah. But finally, last year we got a Garo Vanishing Line, which was not first outright declare as a Garo series. It was just called Vanishing Line. I think that's how they got you. It's like, okay, this looks cool. What is this?
That was exactly it. I was like, dude, this looks dope. What is it? Vanishing Line. Okay, all right. And then maybe a month or two down the line, they're like, hey, guess what? Garo Vanishing Line. I was like, oh, I've never watched a Garo before, but you got me interested.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, maybe this will be better than Crimson Moon again. At least judging from the chat, I was like, oh, okay, I dig it. I dig this much more because this time it's set in a semi-fictional American city called Russell City, but really it's New York. Come on.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just, from the look and everything, this looked much more up my alley. And, not as, I don't want to say overused because we have seen a lot of anime set in an American setting, but still, I don't know. I haven't seen that in a while. I thought it was pretty interesting just because of that. But yeah, Vanishing Line is following the adventures of the Makai Knight's sword, who is a walking meat tank of a man that really loves boobs. Like, really loves boobs. I
don't see what's wrong with that.
No, I'm not
chauvinism.
Well, he at least prays every time he sees a nice set of them. I guess that's some kind of good behavior. I don't know. But yeah.
Praising the gods for the bounty they have laid before him.
Yeah. He's weird, but funny. And has, as his name implies, a giant-ass sword. Also an amazing giant-ass motorcycle. And he runs into the young orphan girl Sophia Hennes, mostly called Sophie, who is on the search for her lost brother, Martin. Her only clue being the word El Dorado, which her brother left her on his computer screen. She gets caught in the clutches of a horror that wants to eat her, naturally, because that's what horrors do. Sword saves her and is from now on stuck with his surrogate daughter/sister because Sophie is convinced that Sword is the man who will be able to help her find her brother. And during the course of the series, some other players get added to the team. For example, the femme fatale Makai alchemist Gina and the stoic gunman Luke. And together they have to find out the meaning behind El Dorado and how it is related to our heroes' personal stories. All the while, dark forces pulling the strings in the background play a dangerous round of chess that only they know the endgame of. So, yeah, right out of the bat, I gotta say, I loved the character roster in this show. Sword is a super enjoyable and sympathetic kind of main character. I say kind of because the other one is obviously Sophie. But yeah, he is fun, goofy, has a good heart. Sophie is great too, relatable, gutsy, never annoying. I loved her relationship and dynamic with Sword. Actually, I loved all of the character dynamics in the show. Gina is the Fujiko Mine to Sword's Lupin. In fact, you could also say Luke is Goemon and Zaruba, Sword's magic talking ring, and also his giant bad pottish motorcycle is the Jigen of this show. The whole wacky family tone the series was going for when its main characters were interacting with each other was very reminiscent of Lupin for me. I don't know why, but that just struck a chord. I was like, hey, this character constellation is very familiar.
I never really thought of it like that before, but now you're saying it, I can see that.
Especially coming out of Lupin season 4 and then just jumping into this and was like, yeah, this is a lot of this feels very familiar. Especially, Sword's relationship to Gina is very, very, very similar to that between Lupin and Fujiko. And yeah, I don't know. It felt, he's not a thief or everything, but he's also goofy and, but competent and yeah, I don't know, a lot of stuff. But at the same time, it didn't feel like a ripoff to me because each of the characters have enough going for them to differentiate them from the character roster they maybe were inspired by. At least that's how it felt to me. And you didn't think about the connection to Lupin until now, so apparently they felt different enough that it didn't ring too hollow. Now, animation-wise, this is a really well-done show. Just like the other series, it was produced by MAPPA, who have made some really great shows. Ushio and Tora being one of my absolute favorites in recent years, but also Rage of Bahamut, the third season of Hajime no Ippo, Kids on the Slope. And they also worked on Yuri on Ice, a big hit in the anime community. They worked on Kakegurui, they worked on TQ, one of your favorites.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff. I think the standout in the show, animation-wise, are the action scenes. I mean, this is an action show. They are supposed to be the standouts. The fight in the first episode is already pretty crazy, but when a key opponent appears at a later, let's say, midpoint of the series, the ensuing battle had such good action choreography that I was blown away by it. I watched that fight 3 times because I loved it so much.
Yeah,
and
man,
that's saying
when this show looks good, it's incredible.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. Like when Mappa is firing out of all cylinders, I mean, they can deliver some really wonky stuff too. Let's, say Inuyashiki, I talked about the look of that show before. That didn't look good. Not at all, especially because of the wonky CG stuff. And CG is a part of that show too. Me saying the show looks so good is saying something because it's still using CG for the armored versions of the characters like it did in the Tokusatsu show. And there are definitely some parts where more easily distinguishable armor designs would have helped to understand what exactly is going on in the fights, because they get so crazy at times that they're a bit hard to follow, but because you can't necessarily make out what part of the armor you're looking at in certain small scenes.
Yeah.
But those scenes where I was completely lost were pretty rare. And I thought just overall the action direction of the show was pretty stellar. Like I said, they're not all of the fights look super great, but at least good. And some of the fights look downright amazing. And I was really happy with that as an action fan. The series was directed by, oh God, I hope I pronounced this right, Sung-ho Park, which I assume is a Korean fellow?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it.
Yeah, and this seems to be his first full-time director gig, but he was already an episode director for the first Garo anime and worked as key animator on Macross Frontier, Fairy Tail, and other stuff. And I think for a first outing, he did some really good work here. And I wonder not him being part of Garo Crimson Moon is part why I didn't like that show as much, or that show didn't look as good. I wonder he had a important part in that. But yeah, music is also pretty good. Some nice rocking tunes and 2 great OPs. I like the second one a lot better though. I don't know how you felt about it. I thought that once that second part of the show starts, I thought that opening was pretty damn great.
As far as animation goes, or I should say, that's not the right way to word it. As far as visual representation goes, I think that's a better way of wording it. Yeah. I think the second intro is a lot stronger because, the first intro is just close-up shots of swords, armor. That's cool. That's neat, but it doesn't...
Very nicely staged, and interestingly animated.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really give any context for the show. So, but, I liked the song in the first intro better because, I fucking love Jam Project. But yeah, I think thematically and visually, the second intro is stronger.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Agreed. I also like the song in the second one better. But I don't know. Just felt better to me, a bit more emotional. I don't know. But yeah, still, both openings are great. And, in general, the music in the show is also pretty good. Now, story-wise, and this is a mostly straightforward action show. Like I said, we have some, horror themed things and input and scenes and tone going on there, everywhere pretty much. But, first and foremost, this is an action show. Sword and his compatriots taking out horrors with their weapons, like it's Devil May Cry Tuesday. But yeah, that's the biggest part of it. And then you got this underlying mystery, with Sophie and her brother. But first we have the monster of the week, these monster of the week episodes where our main characters are introduced and their relationships and everything. And we get to see what the horrors are about and how that works and everything. And then we get a big turning point at the kind of halfway mark of the show, a bit earlier, with some plot revelations and developments. And then it turns into kind of a road movie where Sword, Sophie, and later Gina and Luke travel the land in search for El Dorado.
Yeah. I thought the scale of this cross-country journey was really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it gave us lots of interesting little vistas, different vistas. And once they find El Dorado, the last few episodes deal with the fight against the big bads and the reveal of the final mysteries. I like most of the story, but more because of the characters than because of the plot. I mean, there are some twists and turns, but a lot of the developments are rather predictable, I would say.
Yeah, I would say the big quote-unquote twist at the end, I think I saw like 2 or 3 episodes in advance, so I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. I was like, you know what, that's fine, but all right.
Yeah, I saw that coming pretty early too, just how the characters were structured, and then you have these chess themes guys like Knight, Bishop, and Queen, and I wonder who King is gonna be. Although it's interesting, which I didn't know that, but apparently, the bad guy is connected to the other Garo series as well. I wasn't aware of that, and maybe I need to watch Crimson Moon after all, because pretty late in the series there are some hints at him having some connection with the events of the other series as well. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of neat. I didn't expect that. But yeah, aside from that, it's not a really surprising show. So if you're hoping for a tale of twists and turns with fresh ideas and underused themes, this is not really that. This show is fun because of its action scenes and its character dynamics, and it's, like I said, not super surprising but well structured plot, and which is not to say that I hated the story. It's just not super interesting.
I won't say it's by the numbers, but it's run of the mill.
Yeah, it feels like, okay, I have seen this before. I can guess where this is going. It's not badly executed for most of it, but I'll get to that quickly. But it's just okay. Been there, but not bad. Like I like what I see, but I've kind of seen this before. There are some flaws when it comes to the resolution for everyone's personal story arcs, I would say. Sword gets some closure, but it's not that emotionally staged or gripping or anything. Gina is mostly like the kick-ass lady muscle with the big guns in more ways than one, which is cool, don't get me wrong. I mean, at one point she buys a minigun for her car, and that gets some great use during the show. What's not to love? But I would have liked if they had given her a bit more depth. I think she deserved that. And I mean, there are some good scenes with her and Sword and Sophie and everything. But a bit more interesting backstory and everything would have gone a long way for me.
We got a bit more about Luke than we did about Gina.
Yeah, but Luke also, we got the setup and him evolving further and everything, and he has this very interesting setup and relationship with one of the bad guys, but then he probably gets the shortest end of the stick when it comes to the resolution of character arcs, because the one confrontation that should have been solely about him and the nemesis from his past gets wrapped up by Sword instead. Yeah. It felt really badly executed, in my opinion, and lacked any kind of emotional component. I know why they did this, because they wanted a big final battle between those characters, but they shouldn't have done that. They should have had that confrontation between Luke and that person, because that's where the emotional focus was, because those characters have history, and that's how it, that's how it was supposed to wrap up between those two. But because of some weird, I don't know, power interest of that character, and thus, or power, I don't know, greed of that character and wanting to fight strong characters and thus wanting to fight Sword, that's how they ended that storyline, and that was just a bad decision in my opinion, just from terms of emotional resonance, because there was none in that fight, and it was like, okay, that should have been Luke. Like, why? I know he's not our main character, but that was his story. So why didn't you give him that?
No, I agree. You're right.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of a shame. But the most interesting arc is definitely Sophie's. Especially later in the show, she becomes the factual main character, more so than Sword, even though he has a personal stake in the final battle as well. But the climax of the show is all about her story. And while tragic, I liked how they wrapped up her arc. If they had ended one episode earlier than they did, I would have left the show unsatisfied, but we get a really neat epilogue that also ends in the most perfect encapsulation of Sword's character that I can think of.
Yeah.
Like, laughing your ass off is not the worst way to wrap up a show, I would say. And I did. There was a perfect moment and a perfect way to end this show, and left me really happy. So, yeah, I was sad at some point in the show, and I was really angry, I think, at the end of the penultimate episode, because I thought they would end it a certain way, and I was like, no, don't do that, no, there's, you did so much good stuff with those characters, don't waste this, and I was very happy they didn't go that route, and turned it around again, and I was like, oh yes, good. And I was really, really, really happy. So it was like a roller coaster ride of emotions there for me. But yeah, it ended on a really good note.
I feel like it sort of left a weird unanswered question without saying too much about it. But whatever, it's fine.
We can talk about that after the show. I wonder what it is. I felt like there were not that many open questions, or I can't think of any, but we'll see. And maybe we'll get another season. I mean, if we get another Garo series, it will probably be a new setting again, because that's, how they've done the series until now.
Yeah, I don't mean like an overarching plot thread, but we'll talk about it.
All right. Yeah, but, maybe we'll see a movie with those characters again, like they did for the first series. I think Vanishing Line was a success.
That'd be cool.
I've seen mostly positive comments for this show. But yeah, probably the next thing we see if we see another Garo anime, will be a new cast of characters, because that's how they've done it until now. Every series has a new cast. So
I didn't know. I looked it up because I was curious that apparently Zaruba is like a recurring object / character throughout a lot of the Garo franchise.
Every Makai Knight has basically a Zaruba, a ring with that name. I don't know if it's all supposed to be the same, or if it's just the name of the item. I'm not sure. But I think they're named Zaruba in every series. There's also a Silver Knight, and I think his ring was named Shirwa, but I'm not sure. But yeah, just, the talking ring is basically like the body of the main character, and they, talk to each other and everything. But yeah, definitely, you're right, recurring character. And also source of fun. I think it was a a fun character in the show. Not really developed or anything, but, had some interesting scenes with Sophie, and you could feel that Tim and Sword had some history together. Like I said, it feels kind of like the Lupin-Jigen dynamic. Again, with that weird connection. But yeah, this is a really solid action show with mostly decent pacing. Some of the road movie part episodes of the series maybe drag a bit, because we return to the Monster of the Week format after, we get some wild developments and everything, and then it's like, okay, back to this again for a while. And I felt like they were stretching the story out a bit in certain parts to get to 24 episodes.
Yeah.
But it's not super noticeable. It doesn't get bothersome or everything. It's just to show it in some episodes, like, okay, this feels a bit slow. Maybe get to the next thing. But there's still some great character bits in those episodes. For example, Sword's method to save Pedro in that one episode was amazing.
Yeah.
I almost fell off the couch when I watched that scene. There's some good comedy in this show. But yeah, solid series with a great cast, some downright amazing fights, a decent, albeit not super surprising story, a few hiccups here and there. But if you're in the mood for some fantasy action, battling demons in a fictional American setting, give it a go. I think you will have a good time.
Definitely. I mean, this is my first outing with Garo, and I'd be willing to take a look at some of the older stuff and, look forward to whatever else is on offer.
Me too. I hope we get some new good Garo stuff soon. And that is a wrap on the 51st episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnimeBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
See you next time.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
A city full of hitmen doesn't sound like a great place to live.
Skeletor and his ridiculous MMO adventures.
And a child of war learning to live again.